Okay, confession time. Here at the show, we do have a soft spot for motor shows. The cars of tomorrow on display this week in Geneva. Tomorrow is not soon enough, though, for the European Union, which back in December decreed a hastening of better fuel mileage and a whopping cut in carbon emissions. 37.5% for cars, 30% for vans by 2030. Music to the ears of the TV talk show host who made the mistake of riding his bike last week to work during an air pollution alert. We'll hear from manufacturers, though, who are not pleased. They warn the new standards are unrealistic. Manufacturers who, after a return to boom years, are braced for a rocky road in 2019 because of the phasing out of diesel, but also potential for trade wars and Brexit, which is already disrupting production before it's even happened. More broadly, if we're talking cars and energy transition, may France's Yellow Vest movement, which was sparked by a fuel tax proposal, serve as a reminder that you can't talk about transport in a vacuum. No time like the present to agree on how we move around tomorrow. Today in the France 24 debate, we're looking at Europe's car trouble. With us, he's a former top executive at French carmaker Renault, Jean-Pierre Corniou of business consultants SIA Partners. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much.
We welcome back to the show Nicolas, Meilhan, senior advisor at EV Volumes. What's EV Volumes?
EV Volume is a data company that provides data for electric vehicles, sales in each and every country in the world on a monthly basis by car, by manufacturers. So it's a very comprehensive database, probably one of the best in the industry for everything about electric vehicles.
All right. We're joined from Uckfield in southeast England by Neil Winton, contributor to Forbes magazine. Welcome to the show.
Hello.
And from Oslo in Norway, Christina, Secretary General of the Norwegian Electric Vehicle Association. Thank you for joining us.
You're welcome. I'm happy to be here.
The France 24 debate on Facebook and Twitter, hashtag F24debate. Yeah, let's begin with a Geneva Motor Show tradition. The car of the year. Automotive reporters announcing that it was the Jaguar I-Pace, which pipped the Alpine A110 in a second round of balloting, a slick electric model that can take you from 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in 4.8 seconds. If it catches your eye, Nicolas, it'll only set you back 78,000 euros.
Which is not affordable to each and every gilet jaune in France, obviously. I think for the third time in a row, we are seeing an SUV as the best car of the year, which is not a good news for CO2 emission, and this is one of the reasons why.
Even if it's an electric model?
Well, SUV if it's electric, it still uses a lot of energy. On the CO2 emission, how it is calculated, of course, it will be better. But it would even be better if it would be not 2.2 tons, but maybe 1.5 or 1.4, a bit lighter. Because whether it's electric or not electric, the lighter the car, the less energy you use and the less CO2 emission you emit.
This demand for bigger cars, even as we're talking about energy transition, how do you explain it?
It's a very tough question because clearly the demand everywhere in the world, in the US, the F-150 Ford is the bestseller in the US. It's a very heavy car, more than 2 tons. And in China, everywhere in the world, we are buying larger, heavier car. And as Nicolas mentioned, it is quite stupid on the environmental point of view, because you are using a device on 4 wheels, which weighs 1.6, 1.7 tons to carry 80 kilos of human body. It's unrealistic. It's against the law of physics. And the market is pushing this kind of solution. Even if you are driving an electric car, you have to move the weight of the car. You need energy. You need more batteries. And the tricky part of the electric car, if you want to have autonomy, you need to charge more battery, more weight, and it's really endless problem.
Yeah, if you want to go from 0 to 100 in 4.8 seconds, you need a big charge.
What for?
Yeah.
What's the real issue of this acceleration?
Yeah.
You go on race, you go on a circuit, but you are not doing that on the Champs-Élysées.
So the question for Europe right now is, how do you faster meet tougher carbon emission standards? Manufacturers were already braced for new emission standards due to go into effect next year. They say the new standards for the year 2030 are disconnected from reality.
The figure decided on by the European Union is almost double what was recommended by the European Automobile Manufacturers Association, which I chair. And so I asked myself, what's the significance of this brutal decision to ignore the recommendation of the industry and simply say, well, no, you said a figure, I'll impose double on you.
The piece that you penned for Forbes, Neil Winton, you were quite damning of these new regulations.
Well, they're rather overambitious. I think that's the problem. The European Union seems very determined to slash away at the CO2 figures without really paying any attention to how we're going to get there in the first place. And I think you mentioned Mr. Tavares from the ASEA. He was saying that by 2030, this could cost 13 million jobs in Europe because the industry just can't keep pace with the regulations.
Industry can't keep pace with the regulations. Christina, do you agree?
Yeah, no, not at all. I think that Europe has to wake up, and European car makers has to wake up. In Norway, so far this year, we already have 40% of our new car sales are fully electric cars. The demand for new electric cars is big, and still you see that car makers in Europe blame consumers, that consumers are not ready. We're ready. We want to drive emission-free. And to do that, we need cars that can run on renewable energy. So I don't get it, because what is a lot bigger threat is actually that if the European car makers can't deliver the cars, the electric cars, then the Chinese companies will come and take over. And that is a lot of a bigger risk than the restrictions and the demand from the European Union. We have to remember that the demand is growing all over the world. In China, fourth quarter of last year, new car sales, 7.4% of new car sales in China as a whole were electric cars. And Europe is lagging behind.
But Christina, let me ask you, because we've seen with the Yellow Vest movement here, a lot of the lower middle income class people who need their car to get to work for their livelihood, they say they can't afford these new hybrid or electric models.
No, they don't buy new cars at all. People with a certain income buy new cars, but then gradually these cars will be available for also lower income people, and they will be available to a lower cost because they run on a lower cost because fuels are expensive, electricity is cheaper, and the maintenance, of course, is a lot cheaper as well. So in Norway, it's already a well-functioning second-hand market for used electric cars, and it's not just rich people driving them. They are very popular in also lower income groups.
Neil Winton, do you take Christina Bu's point?
Isn't it the case that in Norway they have such a huge proportion of electric cars, not least because they made it impossible to afford internal combustion engines. The taxation makes that unaffordable, so people, of course, go down the electric route.
Yes, it's true. In Norway, we do tax pollution, something which we tax pollution, something which most other countries don't do. And we don't tax cars that can run on renewables. And we do that because we're in a big hurry to reduce CO2 emissions.
Neil Winton?
Yes, well, you're talking about cutting pollution, but I think there's a confusion here between the emitting of CO2 and toxic pollution. Now, the industry has cleaned up its act over the years as far as gasoline-powered cars, where they're very, very environmentally friendly in terms.
All right, we seem to be having. So I'm going to interrupt you, Neil, because we're having trouble with the audio with Uckfield in England. We're going to try to fix it and get back to you. Let me turn to you, Jean-Pierre Corniou. You heard the argument there between Neil and Christina.
Yeah, my personal feeling is really that Norway is a very good example of a public policy which is really enforced. If there is a strong explanation of the issues, if there is the good assistance of the buyers, sharing the burden of this transformation, there is a social coherence between what you are expecting from the consumer, what you are expecting from the car industry, and the goals of the country. And this is the key issue. In the continental Europe, there is no such a consensus of the society about the evolution of the automobile. And this is a key issue.
No consensus even today?
No, there is no consensus. The Germans are still building cars running up to 2,050 kilometers. You have seen the...
But you're seeing the same thing in Germany that you're seeing here, which is the closing off of city centers to polluting vehicles?
Yes, there is a strong need to develop individual cars which are less polluting. We are clear about that. But we have the social answer. And the social answer is a mix of policy between the taxation of pollution, which is right, and the capacity to afford new cars which are going to cover the needs of the society.
You heard Christina say now there's a second-hand market
absolutely.
For those electric vehicles.
In France, it is starting now. You can buy a Zoe in second hand with reasonable price. But the issue is that we have to reduce, really, not by taxation, the cost of electric car. And this is the most important scientific issues of the next 10 years. If we manage to reduce the cost of the battery and to increase autonomy of cars, we will win the battle. Because there is no long-term policy with strong help of the government. One day, the government will stop subsidies to the industry. So the reality of the economy is always stronger than the taxation policy.
All right, earlier we heard the boss of Peugeot Citroën, who's the head of a manufacturers association, saying these new regulations they want to put in are too ambitious for now. Not everyone, though, is worried. Let's listen to the CEO of Europe's largest car manufacturer.
We think that we are preparing well for that transition. We commit to the climate change targets. We want to be CO2 neutral by 2050. We think it's possible, and we think that we can cope with the fleet targets of 2020, 21, 25, and 30. Our strategy are electric cars because we firmly believe that it's the right way forward to drive down CO2 emissions with individual transport. We are preparing well. We are scaling up rapidly. We scale up in China, Europe, and the United States.
Neil Winton, there you hear the boss of Volkswagen saying, we're on our way, we can do it.
Well, I don't know where you got that one from, but also he was saying last month that if the European Union's regime kicks in 2030, cars and Polo won't be affordable, and they won't be able to make them. And he was making the point that would be right across the European Union, where small cars would be right across the market. And that seems to be
Neil, I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt you a second time. I think that the part of the problem we're having with the audio is perhaps feedback. If for part two, try to maybe put an earpiece in, and we'll solve that. Apologies for that. Nicolas Meilhan, your thoughts on what you just heard from the CEO of Volkswagen.
Well, I think all vehicle manufacturers now, they have to do those, and they have to sell those electric vehicles because they have some very ambitious target.
Is it ambitious though, really? Because when he's talking about 2050, that's a long time.
No, we're talking about tomorrow, 2020, 2021. They have to reach a target of 95. And last year, 95 grams of CO2 per kilometer. And last year, it increased once again to 120.
Yeah.
So they have to go from 120 to 95 in 2 years, and it's going to be very hard. If they don't do it, what's going to happen? They're going to pay fines. Yeah. And somebody like Volkswagen in Europe could pay a fine as expensive as 1 billion euro. So they have to put those cars on the market, and they have to find customers to buy it. Because why one car out of two sold in Norway is electric? Because it's cheaper. As simple as that. Norway is the only country in the world where it's cheaper to buy an electric car than a regular car. But in Europe, it's in France, in Germany, it's not the case yet, and that's why it's important to play with the regime, the tax, so that it becomes cheaper. Okay, and this is, I mean, even if vehicle manufacturers put those nice electric cars at Geneva Motor Show on the market, you still need to find a buyer. These electric cars can drive you
Jaguar
every day to go to work, but you can't use it in France to travel 500 kilometers. It is not possible.
The buyers are there. It's just these. They don't really try selling the cars, do they? They do in Norway because we have a real competition here. But I know that there's demand in many different countries that is not met at all today.
That's
not met at all.
That's
Christina Boo, we're going to pick up on that point. We'll take a very quick break. Stay with us. You're watching the France 24 debate. Welcome back, or welcome if you're just joining us. It's the France 24 debate. We've seen some good years for Europe's car market, and we're expecting a bit of a rocky road ahead, particularly when it comes to that energy transition. We're talking about it with Jean-Pierre Corniou of business consultants SIA Partners. Also joining us, Nicolas Meilhan, senior advisor at EV Volumes. From Uckfield in southeast England, Neil Winton, a contributor to Forbes magazine, and from Oslo, Norway, Christina Boo, Secretary General of the Norwegian Electric Vehicle Association. We were talking about the Geneva Motor Show that is taking place, and it includes electric cars, concept cars, like, for instance, the Citroën Ami 1, built for sharing in inner cities.
To open the door, I just have to get my smartphone ready, get it close to the QR code, which will automatically trigger the locking of a door. The only thing I have to do is accompany the opening of a door. Once I am inside the vehicle, I have a place here where I can put my smartphone, which contains the intelligence. And then I will start the vehicle's machine interface, and I'll be able to see and read on the top window the relevant information related to my trip. Navigation, infotainment, my music, my playlists, or access to services, such as geolocalizing charging stations, or to indicate a place where I want to go. Once I am settled in, I just have to start the vehicle with the start button, which is in a technical position, so the driver will find everything they need to move around within their driving acts.
So, Jean-Pierre Corniou, is this what the future looks like?
Oh, pretty sure of that. We are still in a model where we build large cars for using them 2 weeks per year. It's absolutely stupid. We really need, for cities, small cars in shared usage like this one, light ones, cheap ones. And I can imagine that we are going to use cars under 10,000 euros in the next future. We don't need a Mercedes S-Series to drive inside the cities. And remember that more than 50% of the world population will live in large cities. So we have to consider the real usage of individual mobility. And this is the real concern for the car industry, because they are not intelligent enough to propose to the consumer attractive new solutions.
Christina, just before the break, you were saying that there's a demand that's not being met.
Yes, definitely. And it's not met in Norway, and it's also challenged in many other markets. So I think that the biggest problem with the situation in Europe is that politicians and car makers don't understand that it's not about blaming consumers. Rather, they should try to cooperate and see how Europe can be part of the future and be part of delivering the future mobility. Because it's exactly as you're saying, we're facing a total disruption in the car industry. And it's about electrification, obviously, but also about car sharing, new mobility solutions, connectivity, etc. And there are new players entering the field every day almost. And that is the biggest challenge going forward, and something that Europe has to wake up and understand.
Neil Winton, would you say that things could go faster than we think?
Well, there's a bit of data from Volkswagen that I've been using in various stories recently. They've said that by 2025, 5% of cars made will be battery electric. And Volkswagen and all the big German companies are working. But in reality, we're not going to get anywhere close to 25%. It'll be more like 10%. Various stuff that I've seen. So
we're still having audio issues. Unfortunately, Neil Winton, this is a bit frustrating. I'm so sorry about this, but you're fading in and out. Unfortunately, your thoughts on this, Nicolas Meilhan?
Well, I think this car was very interesting. What the guy at Citroën forgot to say, it's weight 500 kilos, and this is definitely the car of the future. He talks about the smartphone. What is important is the weight, because tomorrow, when in an energy-constrained world, we need to drive lighter cars. These kind of cars are sold by millions samples in China. It's called low-speed electric vehicles. It's 1 to 2 million electric vehicles
2.5 million
every year. And this is definitely the car of the future, which you can use not only in cities, everywhere, just to commute, to go. And it doesn't, for me, the city's car will just go out, whether it's electric or not electric. But it's to commute. And this is definitely an interesting, probably the best solution. And definitely on a European level, the authorities should encourage to people to buy those light electric vehicles, because they're just what we need.
Christina, let's take this out of Europe for just 1 second. A lot of our viewers are in other parts of the world, in South Asia, in Africa. There just aren't the infrastructures there right now to have places where you can plug in and charge up.
Yeah, well, it's a big interest also outside of the most obvious markets. And we experience that as the Norwegian EV Association. We get a lot of visits from all over the world. And the interest is a lot about charging infrastructure, obviously, but also to learn how Norway has used their policies and to make this happen. But yes, there is a challenge going forward. But what is giving me hope when it comes to charging infrastructure is that there are now more and more of the big money, bigger companies going into these, investing in charging companies, etc. So we're seeing a big change just the last year when it comes to interest in investing in this new energy sector that is melting together with transport.
All right, so the question of whether or not the EU can meet its own emissions target is high on the minds of manufacturers as this Geneva Motor Show takes place. There's another concern on everyone's mind, It's called Brexit. The boss of Toyota in Europe warning the Financial Times he doesn't see the Japanese maker rolling out new models if there is a no-deal Brexit. And after Nissan's announcement it won't build the new X-Trail in Sunderland, and Honda's announcement that it's closing its plant in Swindon, there is real fear at this point. Jean-Pierre Corniou, how does it affect Europe's market as a whole?
For UK, it's a terrible nightmare, because this place has been a large place for the automotive industry in Europe. They played a major role, and they have been the first to have Japanese implants. And the bad news is that the car industry is going to vanish.
It's going to vanish.
Yeah, I'm sure. Because there is no longer any interest of anybody, or any car manufacturer, to produce in this platform.
But it's a big domestic market as well.
Yeah, but it's 2 million vehicles per year. It's now such a large market for them, and they can anyway export. And as we have mentioned, the demand is moving very fast. And UK is a place where the market can change drastically towards new kind of vehicles. And to my point of view, those new kinds of vehicle could be built by newcomers. If there is a strong political will in UK, you will have newcomers building those cars with new electric facilities. They are building large nuclear power plants. They have windmills everywhere. And so I think that this transformation of the car industry in UK could be a very good news for the future of the consumer in UK.
All right. Do you see the same silver lining, Nicolas Meilhan?
Well, if you take France, between 2000 and 2010, there was no Brexit, but we closed 12 plants in Western Europe and we opened 12 plants in Eastern Europe. And this is one of the big problems we'll have to face with electric vehicles, because for the time being, China is investing a lot to get the global lead and become the global production platforms. This year, you can buy a car from Volvo, produced in China. Next year, you can buy a car from BMW, produced in China.
Yeah.
And this is one of the big questions with the electric vehicles. Are we going to buy all our vehicles from China? Because they have the full control on the battery production. And this is one of the biggest challenges we have in Europe. You have to understand that Europe automotive industry is one of the most protectionist in the world.
Yeah.
You can't find a Chinese car on our roads, right? But with electric cars, it's going to change everything.
Yeah.
And this is why Carlos Tavares is very worried and mentioning the 13 million jobs at risk.
Yeah, because there's talk, Christina, of the French call it building an Airbus for car batteries, basically this giant European conglomerate that can build the batteries on this continent. What does your crystal ball tell you when it comes to that?
Oh, we should have started a long time ago in Europe. And I'm afraid that we're a little too late, because it's actually exactly how Nicolas is saying. It's Chinese control most of the battery production. And they are very, very close to entering Norway. They will Europe. They will enter Europe already this year. Several Chinese car manufacturers have concrete plans of entering Europe with electric cars already this year. And they have the help and the support from the Chinese government, and they're working together to conquer the global market. And they will most probably succeed, because they're very far ahead also when it comes to digitalization, connectivity, etc., in addition to having the control of batteries.
Yeah,
I do really hope that Europe can start. We do have companies that are producing batteries in Europe, but we really need to speed up that. And I would really hope that we could start focusing on how to succeed instead of fighting over the stronger restrictions, etc., because that is not the problem. The problem is for the European car industry to really survive.
Yeah, so to build that battery, Nicolas Meilhan, do you need a big conglomerate, a big Airbus type conglomerate, or can it be done with a more cottage industry type industry?
To get some good prices on batteries, you need economies of scale. So this is why you have 5 companies in the world, basically 2 Korean, LG Chemical, Samsung, 1 Japanese, Panasonic, and then 2 Chinese, BYD, CATL. And they have the economies of scales because they produce thousands of batteries. And we haven't invested there. And we are far too late on this, and that's been recognized by the European Commission. So if we want to develop those electric vehicles, we have to be autonomous on the battery production. Yeah. And the problem is that in those batteries, you need something called cobalt, which is refined 80% in China. When Christina was mentioning some Chinese manufacturers coming in Europe, it's not so much about Chinese manufacturers, it's European manufacturers that will have their production base in China, and then sent and shipped the car to Europe.
Jean-Pierre Corniou, when you
this is a good reason why Volkswagen is absolutely positive regarding the future of electric car in Europe, because Volkswagen is a Chinese car manufacturer. They are producing 3.5 million vehicles in China. They are very, very supporting to the government policy of electrification in China. So they behave like a Chinese company. And they say, we have no problem. We have the market, we have the technology, we have the relationship with the ecosystem. So we are able already to produce electric car in China and to export them in Europe or in the US.
And does VW have any plans to make the batteries here in Europe?
BMW is working with CATL, and CATL, it's a Chinese manufacturer. They open a plant in Europe, in Germany, for some exactly, for some of the car. You have also something interesting. LG Chemical, who is opening a plant in Poland, which is the most dirtiest electricity in the world, with 90% of coal. So it's a black battery for a green car, which is a bit strange. But for the time being in Europe, there's been some initiatives, but Bosch said it's too expensive because they don't have the scale. Yeah. Nissan tried it at some point, but they get rid of it.
Yeah, they get rid very rapidly because it was too tricky.
In France, we're a bit Colbertiste. You know, we like it when the state gets involved. Can the state do something in this case?
We have very good R&D facilities in France with CEA, Commissariat à l'Énergie Atomique, which is very strong in battery, and probably one of the best R&D place in the world. But we have no capacity to industrialize that. But we can expect a real technological breakthrough in battery. There are a lot of research development in the world about new techniques in battery, increasing the autonomy, which is a real concern, and also reducing the cost. So I bet
and the waste. What about reducing the waste? From used batteries?
Because they are using less rare earths, and they are able to improve the capacity to be ecologically friendly of those batteries. We have also the hydrogen way, which is not closed. We can also invest in Europe in hydrogen, and hydrogen is a good solution for some cars.
Just want to mention there is 2 solutions to this problem. The first one, as you said, is invest in R&D in the next generation battery. Yeah. We know we lost the battle up to 2025. It's over. Yeah. We need to find a battery which it's called solid-state batteries, which does not use cobalt. Yeah. Or we do cars which have a smaller battery. And if it's a smaller, like this car Citroën, you don't need the cobalt anymore. Absolutely. But we have to find a way to be autonomous, and we have to come up with an industrial plan.
You agree with that, Christina? Forget the battle to build the current generation of batteries. Just work on the next one.
There's always something next. And there's always news about what's coming. But the market is... We're really facing a paradigm shift. The market is changing in an incredible, will change a lot faster than most people understand. So I think we should get along and start joining already right now. And of course there are as challenge with the cobalt. and the fact that it's produced mined in Congo. But even amnesties say that we shouldn't stop importing buy cobalt from Congo, but we should make sure that there's transparency in the value chain, and we should make sure that this can be produced in an ethical way. However, there are already big steps towards reducing the amount of cobalt in today's batteries already. Tesla, BMW, and several other companies are doing a lot to make that happen. But yes, there will be new technologies. There's a lot of research going on, but the market is not waiting. This will go now, and Europe has to be part.
All right, we're almost out of time, and I can't help it because we have a former executive from Renault here to talk for just 1 second about Carlos Ghosn in Tokyo this Wednesday. Third time lucky for the former Renault-Nissan's bail request, walking out of jail for the first time since the former Renault-Nissan's boss November 19th arrest. His new hard-hitting defense attorney links his corruption charges to the Japanese maker's desire to review the balance of power with Renault.
At this stage, this is entirely my speculation. But I think the current situation involving Renault and Nissan may have had an influence.
Jean-Pierre Corniou, we don't peddle in conspiracy theories on this show, but your thoughts on this?
Yeah, it's a terrible story because what's at stake is the future of the alliance. The alliance was a very strong idea of Schweizer. Schweizer launched...
Predecessor of Carlos.
Schweizer launched this project in 1999, and it has been a tremendous chance for Renault and after from Nissan to really build something new, an alliance between two major companies in the automotive industry, which is a very difficult success to achieve because it's very complex. Automotive industry is very complex. So Carlos Ghosn has been the driver of this alliance during 10 years. And to my opinion, he's done a very good job. He's done a very good job because now there is a reality in the industrialization of platforms of both Nissan, Renault, and Mitsubishi. This is a major point to build an industrial empire which is a strong basis. Now the problem of Carlos Ghosn as a person is another story.
Another story.
We don't know, we really don't know the charge about him. But what I would like to say that he spent 108 days in a Japanese jail, which is really not very comfortable. And I think he has been personally shamed by this situation, which is terrible for a person like, for all of us, but a person like him. And I think he will be reasonable in the future because I don't see him blaming everybody in this story because he knows that if there is too much fuss about the relationship between Renault and Nissan, it will jeopardize the future of the alliance.
Jean-Pierre Corniou, I want to thank you so much. I want to thank Nicolas, Meilhan. I want to thank as well Christina for being with us from Oslo. Neil Winton, who was with us from Uckfield in southeast England. Stay with us. Media Watch is next. We say hello to Nicolas Rushworth.
Hello. And Carlos Ghosn is world news, of course. Let's go to the New York Times, which has a picture of him emerging from custody surrounded by police officers and wearing a mask and outfit. And there you can see he's actually hidden away. It's hard to tell which person it is in that image. There, the New York Times saying he's sneaking past a crowd of waiting reporters. Of course, was that deliberate or not? Some of the jibes in Japan were, he's got the silly Japanese habit of wearing masks, and that mask theme came up on the buzz. Let's go to one tweet reaction here. Critical of Carlos Ghosn. Same picture, but in French it's saying there that the former guru of the polluting car, the expensive and unreliable car, is getting out an anti-pollution mask to leave jail after, as you said, after 108 days. And that didn't stop there, of course, the whole theme of masks emerging with Carlos Ghosn gone. What have you done for me lately? I can't breathe, with criticisms flowing towards him, as you said, in jail in Japan, the other side of the world for him. Not obviously in Nissan working there much of the time, but very much a strange place perhaps for him. Here the cartoons Plantu in Le Monde saying that he still believes in Renault, and the Japanese judge is chiming in, says, was he radicalized in prison? Another cartoon out there, much more savage than that. This one, innovation at Renault. We have invented the driverless safe, and in that picture it actually is going to Switzerland, funny enough, which is where the European...
Maybe not to the motor show, but okay.
The European Motor Show is underway the next 10 days, isn't it? 7 to the 17th. So that theme. Before I end on that, I just want to go to the Hindustan Times, which is showing the picture of the world's most polluted city, Greenpeace, in its report in the last 24 hours, saying that Gurugram, southwest of New Delhi, is the world's most polluted city. 22 cities in India are on that list of top 30 world polluted cities. There you see how horrible it must be in that traffic jam there. How many lanes are there? The Hindu Times saying only 2 air monitors in that city to deal with the problem. Just to establish the scale of the problem. The Guardian picking up this, the 22 leading cities. So we're in that terrible triangle of, yes, economy developing, but what about how do we deal with the issues now? We've got that Geneva Motor Show. My choice is an electric Bugatti. Maybe not very practical, and it won't save the planet. But some of
you need $5 million to buy it.
19 actually for that
19.
one.
19. Oh, I'm sorry.
Is this the future? An orange flying.
19. Of course.
An orange flying car. The Geneva Motor Show getting underway, but technology, the economy, all that thing, and in the middle, ordinary people. Perhaps in Kerala, they're learning they have an extra long siesta now.
All right. Many thanks for that, Nicholas Rushworth. I want to thank our panel once again. Thank you for joining us here in the France 24 debate.